Hello everybody, UB here, and today we're going to talk about the results of a little experiment that I did with paper clay and the different recipes that you can use to make paper clay. This video is a follow-up to another video I did where I actually explored the different recipes to make paper clay, and then I decided to take those different recipes and make little rocks out of them and put them outside in my garden for a season to see how they would weather. With that being said, this is mostly going to be me talking, so I recorded myself cleaning up my workshop space a little bit. So enjoy some of that visual while we talk about paper clay. So I took these little bits of paper clay that I made many months ago, and I put them outside in my garden to give them the most harsh reality of what being outside for a season would be like. Before I put them outside, they each got a color-coded little bit of paint, and then they got a triple coat of clear coat so that they'd have a little more durability outside. For those who aren't aware, paper clay is basically just paper mache, but in a more clay-like form, so you can sculpt it and move it around much like clay, rather than having to do strips of paper. So for each type of clay, I ended up making a big nugget and a little nugget, and made sure that they were both color-coded to the type of clay that they were, put them outside. And the goofy thing about doing any experiment outside is that it can be really unpredictable. Take all of the results of this experiment with a grain of salt, because basically, I put these outside, and next thing I knew, our garden was rife with mushrooms. There used to be a tree in that spot, so we kind of expected to have some mushroom growth, but it really went over the top. These are called mulch mushrooms, and they tend to show up wherever a tree used to be, just to break down all of the wood chunks and shavings that are left over. Didn't know you'd be getting a science lesson today, did you? But regardless of all that, we can take away some things from this experiment. First and foremost, 2 of the types of clay did not make it through the season. While I was out there gardening and weeding, I actually noticed that 2 of the types of clay had burst and basically disintegrated in the soil. All of the little rocks that I made out of these paper clays were put in basically the same spot, and I tried to fend off the mushrooms a little bit from around them. Even with those efforts put in place, the copy paper and the commercially made creative paper clay were the 2 that just disintegrated in the soil over the course of the summer. Like I said, take that with a grain of salt, because the mushrooms did add another variable into the situation that I wasn't ready for. We can still confirm that the newspaper-based clay and the acid-free paper-based clay both survived the summer. That's actually a really cool thing to hear, because in my last video about paper clay, I talked about how acid is supposed to make paper break down more over time. And so acid-free papers are used by a lot of artists in order to make their work last longer. So we went through a whole process of adding baking soda to the paper and slush mixture before we made it into clay in order to make all of these types of paper acid-free or low acid. But the manufactured acid-free paper is one of the ones that actually made it through the season. Mind you, the paint came off of these quite easily, but that could have been a function of the combination of clear coat and clay that I used. So there's more experiments to be had with this. I was very surprised that the newspaper, of all things, was one of the things that actually made it through. I really enjoyed working with the newspaper-based clay because the newspaper has less tight and less big fibers than the other types of paper did in my experiment. This meant an overall smoother clay, and I really enjoyed working with it because of that. So knowing that these two bases for our paper clay are the ones that weathered the season, so to speak, let's talk about the pros and cons that I have as notes for these two different types of paper clay. Let's start with the manufactured acid-free paper, which you can get at most craft stores, or you can go to like a Staples or an office supply store in order to find acid-free paper. So the acid-free paper, when I was working with it and putting it in a silicone mold, the notes that I have here say that it unmolded pretty poorly, which means it's a little more sticky than the other types of paper that we were working with. And at the 3-hour mark, it was the most dried out of any of the types of clay that I had tried. I really am just mind blown that the creative paper clay, which is manufactured paper clay, didn't make it through. I might have to redo this experiment next year because I am mind blown. But going back to our current results, the newspaper seemed to start out drying the quickest, but it didn't really end up drying as well overnight. So if you're going to use newspaper to base your paper clay, it might take longer to dry, and you might need to give it a full 48 hours to fully dry and cure on the inside, depending on how thick you're layering on your clay, obviously. So from what I can tell from the results that we have here, take them with a grain of salt, obviously, but we will do more follow-ups if I'm able to. The acid-free base for the paper clay is really the best one if you're doing your own sculpting. You're not putting it into a mold and trying to take it out. And if you're on a time crunch, because the acid-free paper base seemed to dry much faster than the newspaper did. And according to my notes, acid-free paper did dry faster than the copy paper did, like just A4 paper out of your printer, basically. So acid-free paper as the base of your clay was the fastest drying. Newspaper, on the other hand, a much smoother experience. I really enjoyed working with it. And also you get newspaper for free in most places, at least where I live. So it's a really easy base to just make a lot of. You may make something with the newspaper-based clay and think, oh, this is actually drying really fast. But keep in mind that it takes longer to cure, so you're going to want to give it at least 48 hours to really solidify before you're putting any paint or clear coat or anything else on it. The other con to the newspaper-based clay is that it's a little gray because of the ink that is in a newspaper. So if you're looking for a more porcelain white scenario, you might want to go with a white acid-free paper. The other likelihood with both of these is that over time they would yellow in the sun, so keep that in mind for your projects as well. With all that being said, I have a couple of projects that I really want to make my own paper clay for going forward, so you'll be seeing some of those in the new year on the channel. I'll be going forward using the newspaper-based clay because I just enjoyed the experience more, but you make the decision that is best for you. If you would like the recipe to my paper clay, you can find it on my Patreon for free at UBDraws. I also put out tons of other little freebies for my patrons and for people who follow me, so make sure to click that follow button, and if you'd like to support my channel, please feel free to join. With all that being said, thank you so much for tuning in. It really does mean a lot. Here's 1,000 experience points just for that. Thank you to my current patrons, Nathaniel, Twyla, Liam, Liz, and Fluffy. You guys are rock stars. A quick channel update before I let you go. I'm going to be taking the next couple of months easy and doing more talk style videos like this so that I can get ready for a new year and hopefully come to you with a more thoughtful approach to how I'm doing my videos. I love the progress that we've been able to make in the past year or so on the channel, so that is what I'm looking forward to in 2025. If you haven't subscribed yet, please do like the video. Don't forget to drink some water, and I'll see you guys again soon. Peace!